Hi, Chuck. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Good. I just caught a little bit of that last story, and now I'm curious. What were you talking about? You were in the Coast Guard?
I was in the Coast Guard, yep.
Tell me about that.
Well, I when I got out of high school, I went to work for the Ingersoll Rand, a factory that was in our hometown, right out of high school. I had also sent in school news and everything to a daily newspaper in the area. And when I went to work for the Ingersoll Rand, they always had a lot of employee problems. They were either always on strike or having a walkout or some damn thing or other. So when they walked out, I'd go back to the newspaper and say, hey, give me another job. But the factory played better. So when the factory went back to work, I told the newspaper, well, I'll be gone for a while. So I went back and forth between the factory and the newspaper there for a couple of years before my time came up for
The draft?
they could draft you. I mean, your number was coming up in September.
Of course.
So if you didn't do something before, then you were going to go in the Army. And I said, I don't want the Army, so I'll join the Coast Guard. So I went in the Coast Guard, and I was in there for 4 years. And I wound up in aviation, which is what I wanted to do. So I flew in the Coast Guard for 3.5 years. I was stationed at Floyd Bennett Field in Brooklyn, and I spent a lot of time in one of these planes. So I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours in one of those things, and loved it. Absolutely loved it. I'd rather be flying than almost anything else. And we were out in all kinds of weather, because if you're in the Coast Guard, bad weather is when people get in trouble. So that's when you go out. So when everybody else was hollering out there, it was when you say, well, let's go out there and find out what the problem is, And I was married at the time, hadn't been married long. And I'd come home sometimes and my wife say, oh, that was a terrible, terrible storm we had last night. I'd say, yeah, I was out in it. She said, you were out in it? She says, and she told me later, she said, I never knew, in our early days of our marriage, what it was that you did exactly in the Coast Guard. And if I'd known that you were out in weather like that, she said, I'd have been scared stiff, I would have been terribly worried about you. You see, there's a blue stripe below it. Why?
Yes.
A blue stripe to the right of it. And just to the right of that blue stripe is a little porthole. And that was where I looked out on the world.
Do you miss flying, Chuck?
Oh, very much, very much. Some years ago, after I'd gotten out, I was working for IBM, and I got a flight down to Dallas for some business or other. And there was a little black girl, maybe 10, 12 years old, that got in the seat right next to me. And she was just shaking and everything. And I said, well, what's the matter, sweetheart? And she says, I've never flown before. I said, you're lucky. I said, you're flying with somebody that's spent half his life in a plane, I said, here, have half a stick of gum. And I always used to carry a stick of gum when I flew, but I always broke it in half and chewed up half of it. I don't know why. But then that keeps your ears, from popping as you go back and forth over the different altitudes. So I said, here, sweetheart, have half a stick of gum. I said, this will fix you right up. And we were just chums all the way to Dallas. I mean, I had the best time with that little girl.
I love that.
No more than 10, 12 years old, or something like sweet little child. And had a wonderful time. We just had a wonderful time.
You're a good guy, Chuck. You just sound like a good guy.
You have a choice, I guess. You can be a jackass or, you can do your best. I tell people I'm pretty mellow. One of these days we're all going to go over the waterfall,
Chuck, you mentioned Brooklyn and being in the Coast Guard in Brooklyn. Where is your hometown?
My hometown, I was raised in a couple of little valley towns up in northern Pennsylvania, right on the New York state line, where there's two rivers come together, the Susquehanna and the Chemung. And in between them are a couple of little river towns there. And that's where I was born and raised, went to school and everything. My wife is from Denmark, but I met her when I was in the military.
And then when did you get married? What year?
We met in 58, we married in 59.
Were you? Wow.
And we were married 62 years. People said, well, how long have you been married? And I used to say, well, we've had 62 wonderful years. And my wife used to say, I remember about 40 of them. So
that's that's probably why you were happily married, right?
Yeah, right. You know.
I mean, the other 22 years, she'll let you off the hook for that. Okay.
That's right. That's right.
So tell me about 62 years. Give me the secrets. Come on. Give me the lovebird secret to stay married for 62 years.
Oh, gee, you know you're in love, okay? And you know you want to make it work. You want to make it last, okay? But every now and then, you know, and she was a beautiful, beautiful woman. She was a Danish girl. She was blonde-haired, blue-eyed, you know.
Go Chuck.
And, oh, she was gorgeous. Go to the sports car races up in Watkins Glen, New York, you know.
Oh, wow,
and went with a bunch of guys for the most part. But one year I says, would you like to go up to see the sports? She says, oh, sure. The sports car races at Watkins Glen were wild and woolly. I mean, it was a weekend of gas fumes and roaring and hooting and hollering, and took her up there one time, and we went. As we went on the front gate, there was a bunch of college guys that had parked a bus there, and they put lawn chairs along the top of it, and they had signs up there. And as girls came in the gate, they'd say, lift your tops because we're going to ride them. So, you know, the girls would do it too. I said, well, there's a 6.7, you know, okay. And here's a 3.4. You know, so the guys would do that, and the girls would do it. They got it. I mean, so anyway, I told my wife, I said, hon, I says, you know, you'd be a good 8.5. I says, give my shit. And she slapped my face.
I bet. Oh, you can't leave a 1.5 on the table. You got to give her a 10, Chuck.
Good point. Good point. You can't leave that on the table.
All right, so you went up to Watkins Glen, New York. So did you guys also go up to New York for Woodstock? Were you a hippie, Chuck?
You know something? My wife and I probably would have been, and we were in that era, but after we ran into each other and found out, you know, we got to make this sucker last, we got married. And so there weren't many married hippies, although we knew a bunch.
What type of music would you have been listening to?
I always liked rock and roll pretty good.
Like what groups? What artists do you like?
Well, Loverboy, Waiting for the Weekend, you know, Grand Funk Railroad.
There you go. We're an American band, Grand Funk.
We're an American band, Grand Funk Railroad. Yes,
Locomotion.
Coming to your town, gonna party it down. We're an American band. Oh, love Grand Funk, yeah. And then both of my boys were good musicians. And one of them played in a band, and he was keyboard and lead vocals. And the other boy played electric guitar very, very well. So both my boys were good musicians, you know.
Chuck, tell us about Solista Charlotte, a Cogir community.
I'm in an independent living apartment because I get along by myself. I walk with a stick, but other than that, I'm good. So I have what they call an independent living apartment, my own little apartment. Very, very nice one. Got a kitchenette, you know, a separate bedroom, you know, and I couldn't ask for a better apartment. It's got everything I need and nothing that I don't need. And I enjoy it. There are lots of other people here. I think someone told me there's the population of retirees here is 110 people.
Yeah, it's a big community, and you made a lot of friends.
I have some close friends among it, as a couple of old geezers like me that I have lunch with about every day. And one of them's 94, and I got to kid him, I said, I'm just a kid.
Hey, he makes you feel young. That's great.
Yeah.
Chuck, before I let you go, I wanted to ask you about mountain climbing.
Well, I used to backpack with a lot of guys when I lived up north, and I worked at IBM. And we had, there's a lot of good hiking country up there. You've got the Catskills, and you've got the Adirondacks, and you've got a lot of really nice hiking country. So there were 4 or 5 of us that we'd get together. We all had good backpacking gear, good packs, good shoes, everything, We had one guy, his name was Bill Terrell. And Bill was the kind of guy, you always want to have on a hike, because we'd be sitting around at night and eating a cold sandwich, and someone would say, God, a little mustard would go good with this. And Bill would say, hey, just a second. And he'd get in his pack, and he'd have mustard, or he had ketchup.
That's
condiments.
That's a good friend to have.
I said, I bet the guy's got capers. Have you got capers? Capers would go good with it.
Shrimp cocktail. He had it all.
God almighty.
I love it. Good for you, though, Chuck. You're still living your best life. You look great, and you still have your sense of humor, which I absolutely love. And I've enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
I have too. I really have too.
And we wish you the very best, okay?
Same here. You have a wonderful time out in Arizona, and if you want to do this again sometime, I'm willing,
I'd love it.
I'm not going anywhere. I got Peggy here.